Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow Public Speaking and Presentations, Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow, and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I'll now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate in this webinar by asking questions and making comments. To do so, please either write in the chat room, raise your hand, turn on your microphone to say hi, and I'll be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, it is our privilege to welcome the Honorable Christopher C. Rosenquest, Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh, New York. Davide Massa, a researcher in urban and transport studies at WSP Global Incorporated, an engineering company, joins me as co-host from Milan, Italy. It's also our pleasure to welcome back Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California. Welcome, Mayor Rosenquest.
Hey folks, how are you doing? Thanks for having me. Look forward to a very engaging, informative dialogue, and just really appreciate everybody joining us for this program.
So Mayor, tell us a little bit about yourself, please, and a little bit about what you do, what a mayor does.
Yeah, sure. It's sometimes humbling to speak about myself, so I'll keep it brief. My name is Christopher Charles Rosenquest. I'm the 29th mayor here in the city of Plattsburgh. Historically wise, I'm the first African-American mayor to serve in this capacity. I'm very proud of that. I grew up here in the city of Plattsburgh, and as a youth, never expected myself to be sitting in this office. I'm very humbled and appreciative of the opportunity to serve my community. And to fulfill my life's purpose in this way, to be of service to others and to my community. I graduated university here. I graduated actually both of the colleges here, one from Clinton Community College and from City of Plattsburgh in 2000. I moved away after graduating, started a career in technology management, software development, and consulting. Moved around a little bit. I then obtained my MBA from the University of Washington, Foster School of Business, and in about 2013 moved back to my hometown to serve my community in this capacity. Before I was the mayor, I served on the county legislature for 5 years, serving Area 9 in Clinton County, which is within the city of Plattsburgh. And in 2001, the opportunity to serve as the mayor. So my term started in January 21. And I've been serving in this capacity ever since. As a mayor in the city of Plattsburgh, and you look at mayors across the U.S. Have different capacities and different responsibilities. The city of Plattsburgh has what's considered a strong mayor form of government, meaning the mayor is considered, as by the charter, the chief executive officer of the city. So this person that sits in this chair is the chief executive. They are the for lack of a better term, city manager, administrator of the organization, the chief of the organization, but also as a strong mayor, the mayor in the city of Plattsburgh is also the presiding officer of the legislative body. So if you look at it from a private organizational perspective, the mayor in the city of Plattsburgh is the board president and the CEO, so the president and CEO of the organization. And as such, that's the responsibility of the mayor, is to make day-to-day operational, financial, and business decisions for the municipality, as well as organize the board members in the political arm as such.
Okay, fantastic. Mayor, and would you tell us a little bit about the city of Plattsburgh? What's the city of Plattsburgh like for people who don't know it?
Yeah, sure. We're a small community, 5 square miles, tucked up in the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains up here in northeast New York. A lot of people say northern New York starts around where the Hudson is, which is very far south, but we are much further north than that. We are about 30 minutes south of Quebec. We are considered Montreal's U.S. suburb, if you will. And we really do appreciate the location, the environment, the outdoors aspect of what we do up here, and we're kind of tucked away as a rural community. However, the proximity to the border, our international partnerships.
As you can see behind me, I have the Canadian flag as well as the U.S. flag. That's a nod to that relationship and that partnership that we do have with our Canadian brothers and sisters, not only the cultural partnerships that we have with our friends in Canada, but there's familial partnerships and familial relationships, as well as international business and commerce relationships that we have with Canada. So as a small municipality, we do have a large influence and a large footprint in the international economy, not only from a transportation, manufacturing, buses, trains, airplane parts. We serve that capacity, but also with a tourism impact, where we do host a number of tourists during the seasonal changes. Summertime, a lot of tourists coming for summertime, but then also winter tourists for our skiing, snowboarding, and outdoor sports.
Fantastic. So before we get to our roundtable, I just would like to ask you one thing about when you first started as mayor, or before you came into the office. What was it like? What was Plattsburgh like then? What do you hope to change? And where's the future looking like? Where are you right now? Where's the future looking like?
Yeah, I mean, without, anybody who comes into political office tries not to be critical of their predecessors. It's one thing that most of us know, that anytime as a leader in an organization, you not only inherit the problems from past administrations, but you also create the problems that future administrations are also going to inherit. So we're coming into office. There was a lot of concerns about relationships with community leaders, relationships with employees and unions. Again, my job as the chief executive is to take care of our unions as well as our employees, those relationships that are really critical to our region. Again, we're not a big community, we're not a big municipality, so partnerships and regional partnerships go a very long way in the benefit, not only regional benefit, but for our municipality's benefit as well. So coming in, there was a lot of relationship building. And thankfully, having served on the county legislature, I had built a lot of these relationships already coming into office. Relationships with our state representatives, relationships with our federal representatives, with local elected officials, with county officials. These relationships were already built in coming in. So a lot of the concerns and a lot of the arguments and breakdowns, lawsuits even, that I came in faced with, were able to quickly be resolved because of those relationships. And again, it's critical as neighbors that we get along because those borders quickly disappear in a region of our size. So that's really a lot of what I had to deal with coming in. What I hope for the city of Plattsburgh is certainly, and it may be more philosophical than it is tangible, but really finding our place and really acknowledging our place in the global and international economy. We are, regardless of what size community we live in, everybody has a global impact. Everybody has an international impact. And as the city of Plattsburgh, multiple years you can go back and look at the Financial Times of London, and the Financial Times of London indicating the city of municipality being, a top 40 micropolitan. Recently, as of last year, we were named one of the top 25 cities in the Americas. Not small cities, not micropolitans, but cities in the Americas, North America, South America, Central America. We came in number 14, and compared to cities like Montreal and New York City and places in South America, this is a big deal for us. And I think that my hope for the city of Plattsburgh is that we really embrace that as who we are and leverage that for future growth and future improvements for our future.
Fantastic. Congratulations also.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
let's take a look. Let's go to our roundtable. The roundtable subject is, what is Plattsburgh, New York's place in the world? Plattsburgh is arguably situated at the most advantageous place in the Lake Champlain region, having a rich array of development and exchange opportunities within its reach. So as we see, there's Plattsburgh in the center, right in the middle of Lake Champlain, and it's just north of Burlington, which sits on the other side of the lake in the state of Vermont, and then Montreal, as the mayor was saying, just north. However, there are significant natural and political barriers that stand in the way of those development and exchange opportunities. Lake Champlain itself separates Plattsburgh, a university city of 19,000 residents, and Burlington, Vermont, a university city of 45,000 residents with 19 miles of fresh water. Plattsburgh is hyper-connected to Montreal, Quebec, one of America's 10 largest cities by 60 miles of interstate highway, but separated from Montreal by the Canadian border and the social political barriers of the French-Canadian language and culture. So there it is, a look from South Plattsburgh over Lake Champlain, looking directly at Burlington and Vermont on the other side of that island. There it is, Burlington to Plattsburgh. Takes an hour and 12 minutes, 31 miles of driving. Whereas the same trip, if you're just going from Burlington up the highway to St. Albans, it only takes 30 minutes. So it's less than half that amount of time if there weren't any physical barriers like the lake standing in the way. And there you have Plattsburgh to Montreal, which is an hour and 12 minutes. It's 62 miles, whereas that takes the same amount of time to get to Burlington, which is just half that distance. So when considering those barriers, it must be easy for any mayor to shelve audacious plans for greater regional integration. Nevertheless, there is much low-hanging fruit to be gathered, as Plattsburgh discovered when repurposing its former Air Force base for Canadian industry and commercial aviation, which Plattsburgh now proudly advertises as, quote, Montreal's U.S. airport. So the question there to you, Mayor Rosenquest, what is Plattsburgh's place in the world?
Yeah, and I think you've summed that up very, very well. And you can see the distance between Burlington, which is I think it's the largest metropolitan city in Vermont. It would be akin to comparing New York City to New York, where Burlington is to Vermont. It's a distance away from us. It's an hour's drive, which includes a ferry ride. As quaint as that is, I know a lot of people would rather see a bridge built between the two land masses across the lake. And there's some, I think there's some residential will for that, and there are some conversations that come up on occasion regarding bridging that gap. But then you also see the same time that you can spend in your car, you could also be in Montreal. So that's the oftentimes the challenge of, do we go to Burlington or do we go to Montreal? We are, as you noted, we serve both communities. We have a regional hospital. We have a large university here. So many people who live in Burlington work in Plattsburgh. Many people who live in Plattsburgh work in Burlington. And so there's that communal exchange between our residents, and that relationship is really critical for us, for the city of Plattsburgh. Same thing with Montreal. We have a number of transportation manufacturers, buses, trains, that operate here in the city of Plattsburgh that are Montreal-based companies. And so when we have their company here that's hosted here in the city of Plattsburgh, and these folks are building buses and trains for large public transportation organizations like the MTA and New York State Public Transit and public transit providers all throughout the world, we do have a very strong foothold and a very strong relationship in that international and global market for transportation manufacturing. When it comes to transportation itself, as you noted, the former Air Force Base, which has one of the longest runways in North America, was repurposed as the local county airport that does provide international customs for international travel that comes into our region. But again, I think the political and the international boundaries sometimes impedes that travel. Although just recently we had an airline spin up in the city of Plattsburgh that is taking people from Plattsburgh down to Philadelphia. The first inaugural flight, there's probably about 10 Montreal Canadians on that flight. And it's easier and cheaper for a lot of Montreal Canadians to get on a bus, travel over the border, fly out of Plattsburgh, New York, do their business, or fly from Plattsburgh to Philly and Philly to other places around the world. But we also have a border in between us. And as many have followed, when COVID really at the height of the global pandemic, our borders were closed. And that became very problematic, not only with commerce, but with tourism, with business exchange, with travel. A lot of these things really impeded the growth, or certainly the momentum that had been created over the many years of having an international airport that serviced Montreal Canadians and serviced Canadians. Having businesses, Montreal businesses and Montreal-based businesses operate in the Plattsburgh region, that border closure really impeded that commerce, and that not only just the commerce, but the tourism and the cultural exchange, which is just as important to us as it is to them. Having our friends, seeing our friends, going to Montreal for brunch, going to our favorite patisserie for the croissant, and enjoying that cultural exchange, which we didn't have for a very long time, really hurt our economy and hurt our relationships and friendships. So again, when we talk about the importance, the international importance and the global importance of Plattsburgh, it does hinge on open border travel between Quebec and the US. It does rely on easy access to Burlington and places south and east and west. And so it really is critical for a community like ours to have access like that.
Fantastic. So, Mayor, I would like to bring in co-host Davide Massa, an urban and transport specialist. So Davide is going to talk to us and ask you some questions about the economic benefits of this is carless streets and new urbanism. Davide? Davide, are you muted? Davide, I think you're muted. There you are. Can't hear you yet. No, still can't hear you. So let's go on while Davide is figuring out his audio. You can try and get maybe a headset or something. Is that better? Then let's go on.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can. Perfect. Hi, Davide.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, sorry. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure for me to listen to the mayor. So thank you, Mayor, for your availability and your very interesting introduction about Plattsburgh. I'm Davide Massa. I'm originally from Milan, Italy, where I am right now, although I've spent the last years partly in the Netherlands, where I studied transport engineering. Then I moved to Stockholm, Sweden, to go on with a research project about railway policy in Europe. So that's a bit what I'm working on now, but I'm very much interested about all urban and transport related phenomena. And I'm very glad to see that even a city like Plattsburgh, which is not like New York City or Chicago, is actually working in that direction. and I'm very glad to be able to discuss this with the mayor. But let me first mention something that I was just looking online just in the last days. We said we want to talk about this new urbanism trend. So this that I would just define as the change in the focus of urban planning and the regional planning from car-centered to people-centered. That's my very quick definition of new urbanism. And the point I would like to discuss with the mayor is how it's been actually proven that these new urbanism theories, practices actually not only benefit a city from a aesthetical point of view, but they actually have a pretty good economic outcome, which is not just opinions, but has been proved to be real. And I just wanna cite two numbers from Copenhagenize, which is a platform based on in Copenhagen, Denmark, calculating that each. If you scroll a bit down, we can just see the numbers, but it's very impressive numbers that each cycled mile or kilometers, well, we can choose, brings an economic advantage of 74 cents, while each driven kilometer, in this case, in contrast, loss, 81 variables, possible explanations, but let's just think about all the externalities that, for example, driving has, including pollution, including congestion. And let's think about, on the other end, all the positive externalities that biking has, like on healthcare, for example, physical activity, and of course, less congestion and less pollution as well. So I was very curious to know from the mayor, what's your stance on this? Well, I really spoke numbers, but the whole thing can be even a bit more theoric. But how do you see, Mayor, this possibility for the city of Plattsburgh?
Yeah, so one thing I appreciate those, I appreciate the approach. If we went back and politically said, all right, Chris Rosenquest, what political platform did Chris Rosenquest run on? It was very much multimodal transportation, improving street access for pedestrian and bicyclists. I'm a bicyclist, by the way. I ride my bike and love riding my bike, and always have. And understanding that the need for improved public transportation as well is critical. And for a number of reasons, yes, we can point to the health benefits of us getting on a bike, and either we're riding for commuting to work or we're riding for pleasure after work or on the weekends with our friends. We can point to the economic benefits of riding a bicycle and the benefits of, if I'm riding through a new city, I see a lot more shops. I'm experiencing a lot more of the streets. It's slower. I can jump off my bike, run into a coffee shop, grab a coffee, jump back on my bike. I don't have to find a place to park. But also, I think one thing, especially for the city of Plattsburgh, that we don't always take into consideration is the economic equity that improved biking and walking infrastructure provides to lower income people, people who can't afford cars, or people who have made bad decisions and they can't drive because of a drug charge or a DUI or driving while drunk, something like that, where without that increased and improved access to transportation, it's prohibitive for people of lower economic status, which is problematic. It's problematic throughout the globe, but when I look at just the city of Plattsburgh, it's also problematic in the city of Plattsburgh. We don't have a strong public transportation system. The city of Plattsburgh doesn't manage a public transportation system. The county manages it, so it's the next level government up from the city of Plattsburgh. They manage a regional public transportation system, but even that public transportation system sometimes falls short for getting people from point A to point B to work or to shop. So from my perspective, even before coming into the city's office, it's been critical, necessary, required even to improve access to transportation by improving bike lanes, bike safety, walking, ADA compliance with sidewalks. ADA is I'm sure you might be familiar with it. It's a federal regulation for disability access. But the whole point is, yes, it's needed. It's required. And again, those facts that you can point to about the economic impact of it, the positive economic impact of it, is just another argument on top of more of the reason to do it, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I would like to also add another perspective, which is not just cycling that we all like, of course, but also just the idea of car-free spaces in the city, especially downtown. So revitalizing areas of the cities, which when they are occupied by cars, they're actually not as accessible as if they are carless, because they're not accessible to as the mayor said, certain groups of people that are usually more vulnerable, and there's also less safety for them when there are cars around and not a car-free area. So because also from a European perspective, of course, there's been a lot of debate, especially, well, of course, we had this circumstance of COVID, which accelerated this process in many cities in the world, pushing for more public space and more well-designed public space. But then we really need to understand that it's no longer about COVID now, but we can just go on in that direction because the economic benefits are there and have been proved as well. There are, even though the activities sometimes have been skeptical of losing clients when they cannot come there by car, it's actually quite the opposite. So it's actually been proved that there's an increase in restaurant, cafe clients, but also people actually enjoying the city. But how can they do that? You need to offer them a good quality of public space, so places to sit, to stop by, for the kids to play and so on, and also taking into account all the possible weather conditions.
Yeah, and you know, I would say, like, if I could maybe sometimes miscategorize U.S. culture, is that there's an addiction to vehicle traffic and vehicles, cars, driving, even parking. You know, in the city, and something that we deal with in the city of Plattsburgh is parking. A lot of people like to park right in front of the door that they're going to walk into, and sometimes it's not always needed, even if it means walking a block and a half. That becomes problematic for some people, but that's also the thing that we deal with here in the city. Car-free spaces, you know, certainly when we talk about farmers markets and public gathering spaces, it's a little bit easier to justify that. Even, you know, and I will say I'm a small business owner as well. I own a small business here right downtown, in the heart of our downtown, in a community, and have for the last 5 years. So I'm not immune to the concern about shutting the street down and saying, hey, well, how are my people going to get here if they're already complaining about walking a block and a half? How are they going to deal with having to drive around and maybe walk 2 blocks? And that it's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge for any municipality to have to face or deal with or introduce as something a little bit more progressive, a little bit more modern. Even if you back it with the statistics and data, it's still going to be a conversation, and sometimes a potential fight. So I think the approach that my office has taken, and that that we've advocated for is reducing the amount of space that cars take up and increasing the amount of space that pedestrians and bicyclists take up, making it a little bit more equal, evening the playing field for multimodal transportation or these different forms of transportation, because it does make our city look nicer. It does slow down traffic. It makes for a safer street. It makes for a more beautiful street, a more accepting street, and it also puts more people on the street, more pedestrians, more walkers, more bikers, because they know that if they're going to go from point A to point B and there's a protected bike lane or there's a separated space for them to operate safely, they're more likely to take that path than to get in a car and drive instead.
Fantastic. So
yeah, I think it's fantastic to hear that from you, Mayor, and especially from what we are used to think as a car-dominated society like America. It's really fantastic to hear that you're moving in that direction. And let me just add one number of this, in my opinion, even a bit shocking data saying that cars are actually parked for more than 90% of the time. And think about all the space that is actually subtracted to the citizenship by that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
If I may break in, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted, before we move on to our next topic, which Mr. Mayor has already begun to talk about, I wanted to bring in Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California. Hi, Lino.
Hello. And hello, Mayor. And David, I just want to commend you with this because I did not grow up here in the United States. I grew up in the Philippines. And whenever I visit Europe, it's really this idea of the people walking in the city, in the squares. And what I find here in America is that a lot of cities, they put a lot of effort in infrastructure, building parking garages. There's always a fight for parking spaces. And it's just so counterproductive, I think, for the businesses and for the people, for the community in general. So I commend this, and I hope that this is going to be much more widespread in the cities here in the United States. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. So moving on to our next topic. This is complete streets. So here we have what the U.S. Department of Transportation considers complete streets. Complete streets are streets designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users, those people of all ages and abilities, regardless of whether they are traveling as drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, or public transportation riders. The concept of complete streets encompasses many approaches to planning, designing, and operating roadways and rights of way with all users in mind to make the transportation network safer and more efficient. Complete street policies are set at the state, regional, and local levels and are frequently supported by roadway design guidelines. So this is what the U.S. Department of Transportation considers a complete street. Davide, can you tell us a little bit about this, and then we'll take and bring in the mayor whenever you like, and then we can take a look at how Plattsburgh is doing with the complete streets at this moment.
Yeah, well, I believe it definitely connects with what Mayor Rosenquest was just mentioning before. So it's really a matter of equitable distribution of public space. So we are used to culturally in the US, but also in Europe, because Europe, as you may know, is very diverse. There are some, probably from this perspective, there are some better examples in Central and Northern Europe, while the southern part, including Italy, needs improvements as well, let's say. But yeah, the point is really, we are used to also mentally allocate space in a way which is just based on our habits, but that doesn't mean that's the most appropriate one. And why do we have so much space devoted to cars and just so little space devoted to other more sustainable modes? And sometimes it's even difficult to give an answer because there's not a correct answer to this. So we just need to challenge this sort of pre-concept that we have. And to do so, I would like Simon to help me by showing what I think is a very interesting example, and that's from a small city in the Netherlands where I've been studying a few years, and that's Delft. Well, the Netherlands is a very interesting example for many things, but in my opinion, especially for urban and mobility planning, because they really have this ability to do everything so smoothly and efficiently integrated, which is just like surprising if you like these topics. And I would just like to show this piece of this is a very close to the city center of Delft, which is a historical city. So the city center is almost 1,000 years old. But let's look at how everything. Can you stop here, Simeon? Let's just focus 1 second on this intersection, and let's look if you can rotate a bit to the right. Oh yeah, that's fine. Let's look how the bike lane. There's not just a buffer zone separating the bike lane from the car lanes, but let's see this very interesting design detail, which is enlarging a bit the bike lane and moving it a bit apart so that a car having to turn has still space to stop. And that's really improving safety, first of all, for cyclists, but then also for pedestrians who also happen to cross there. So the point I want to make, there are many, sometimes very trivial concepts and planning and construction practices and details that are out there somewhere. And I think it's really, we have even a moral duty to look at them, because by following them, we literally save lives. And it's just a matter of design that actually saves human lives. And what I think it's also very interesting is that all these theories and practices that have been deployed in all the Netherlands, but also very well in Denmark and in other areas of Europe, are, as I said, are quite codified. So there's, in some ways, there's nothing to invent. It's really about trying to contextualize them to our situation. So in our case, maybe the city of Plattsburgh. I think for America, it can be quite easy, given that, you know, America, there's much more space than in Europe. There's space to have buffer zones, like we see the grass here. What we could learn from the Netherlands in this case is, for example, to have also the bike lanes with a buffer zone, maybe even with some trees, which providing shadow in summer, and but especially protecting the cyclists from cars. I think that's a very important aspect, and it would be very interesting if the city of Plattsburgh could be a front runner, even in the US, to apply these theories for intersections, for bike lane designs in general, connecting the main hubs of the cities in a very smooth way without interruptions. What do you think, Mayor? Do you think that's actually possible? It takes time, because in the Netherlands, they started 50 years ago with this process, and they keep going. They keep turning street into bike-friendly streets with more space to the bike lanes. So it's really an ongoing process which takes time, but it's important if we start.
Yeah, and it does take time. That's you pointed to, especially that street in the city of Plattsburgh, Broad Street. It's a 4-lane street right in the heart of our city. It dissects our city, travels east to west, and it does not have biking infrastructure. None. No biking infrastructure. As you saw at the first section of the street that you showed, there were bike lanes. But as you come to that major intersection, those bike lanes disappear. Where do those bicyclists go? For somebody like me who's been riding all my life, I've ridden in Seattle, San Francisco, Minneapolis. I don't mind traveling and riding my bicycle amongst other cars, taking up the lanes, knowing the rules, and traveling safe. For most bicyclists or most people who are traveling for work or for necessity, they may not be as comfortable as I might be riding my bicycle. So then they're pushed to the sidewalk, and now you have a bicyclist pedestrian interaction rather
Then
than
you
a
have
car
conflict.
interaction, and there's still a conflict there, right?
Yeah.
So when I first came on board, we did approve a complete streets policy. That's again something that I pushed for, something that I advocated for. Complete streets was introduced sometime back in New York as a policy in New York, and many communities at that time had adopted a complete street policy. And typically what the complete street policy says is do the absolute fundamentally best that you can possibly do, even though it may cost a little more, but do everything that you could possibly do to improve equitable access to streets. And I will say that anytime you look at a complete streets policy, like you could go to the first website that we showed, which showed 2 travel lanes, the federal government one that you showed, 2 travel lanes, a bike lane, a protected bike lane, and 2 walking lanes. And I could say, look, I would not consider that a complete street, because why not have a turning lane, reduce 4 lanes into 2 driving lanes, slow down traffic, create more green space, widen the sidewalks, widen the bike lanes, and slow down traffic, right?
Right.
That would make a much safer access, much easier access. I could go back and I could look at, so what I'm saying is that it's not ever a very perfect solution. It's the best that you could possibly do. We could go back and look at the other example. I don't remember where that was from, but the European example that you showed, where the walking lanes are cobblestones. They're the square bricks. Those, if you put somebody on there in a wheelchair, that's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable ride, right? So there certainly are ways that we can look at improving access that takes in multimodal transportation, whether you're on foot, bike, in a wheelchair, in a vehicle, on a motorcycle, it doesn't matter, right? So these are things that we do look at as how do we improve the entire access for everybody, and there's no perfect solution. The city of Plattsburgh, we just did a redesign of one of our major streets, like right through the heart of our downtown. It's called Margaret Street. Margaret Street was built with 1903 infrastructure, and that's not an exaggeration. 1903 water sewer infrastructure, 1903 water distribution infrastructure, where the city of Plattsburgh was incorporated as a city in 1903. So you can imagine that the infrastructure that's delivering required services like water and taking away sewer, it's as old as the city itself, and that's problematic. So part of that project was primarily to address the failing and aged infrastructure, but second to that was improving access, widening the sidewalks, reducing it to a 1 lane where appropriate, to reduce the traffic in that area, to expand access to bicycling, to making sure that the streets and the street surface and the sidewalk surfaces were appropriate for wheelchair access and people who have strollers. Not only that, but there's 2 other main streets connecting downtown to the college campus. Again, when you look at Plattsburgh's role in not only national but international commerce, our SUNY campus attracts international students. We educate, we train, we attract national students, we attract national talent to come teach at our university. And 2 of those streets connect the heart of our downtown to our campus. It's called Brinkerhoff and Court Street. Both one-way streets, one leaving downtown, one coming to downtown. 2 lanes of traffic, 1 way, 4-foot sidewalks. And part of that Margaret Street redesign was, let's make the connection between campus and downtown a lot easier to navigate. Widen the sidewalks to 5 feet, reduce the travel lane, the driving lane to 1 driving lane. It doesn't reduce parking. You still have parking on both sides, but you reduce the travel lane to 1 lane instead of 2. Create a protected bike path. So as we go into these kinds of new designs and new development within the city of Plattsburgh, we do absolutely 100% consider and should consider complete street policies and creating equitable access to transportation into our streets.
Okay. So
Fantastic. And if I can just add, Simeon, I would just like you to show the audience something from the Dutch Cycling Embassy, which is this platform, which I think is very interesting to really understand, in this case, of course, biking from all the possible perspectives, from how to integrate it with the city, with travel behavior, the infrastructure, and so on. And I think it's something as really full of information that can be taken as example, because we do live in challenging times, and we cannot expect to know everything. It's always good to look at the good examples in something, but I'm very glad to hear from the mayor that is really have this view for the city of Plattsburgh.
Yeah, and not only that, and we talk about complete street policies, and anytime we do a new street design and a new road resurfacing, or what we call a full depth reconstruction, which replaces all of our existing under the ground infrastructure as well as surface infrastructure, we're always looking to improve pedestrian, biking, and car access as well. Last year, we even developed what we called a bike-friendly Plattsburgh plan, which identified the main travel routes in the city, look to see where we can install surface bike lanes. And again, these are smaller improvements that build up the bigger improvements, but having bicycle boulevards where those streets don't have a lot of car traffic, so we dedicate them to primarily bike traffic. Install bike lanes and do redesigns and for protected bike lanes where we can. But that's also all part of this three-phase plan for improving bike and pedestrian access in the city of Plattsburgh.
Okay. Quickly, I'd like us to take a look at our final roundtable, which is called Connecting with Bridges, the Öresund bridge that connects Denmark and Sweden. So David, just tell us a little bit about why this is important.
Well, that's really something that came to my mind. Well, I happened to have traveled over this bridge exactly 1 week ago, because I decided to go by train from Stockholm to Milan, which was quite a long trip, but also very exciting. And I immediately thought of Plattsburgh and Burlington on the other side of Lake Champlain. And even though I'm completely aware that, Copenhagen is just metropolitan area is more than 2 million, while on the Swedish side, Malmö is also about 1 million. So I'm absolutely aware that they're not fully comparable with the case in Lake Champlain. But still, how do you think, Mayor, we could look into a better connection between, with Vermont, with the state of Vermont and the city of Burlington specifically? And there are tools in transport engineering like cost-benefit analysis, which provide, or at least try, but they can also be vulnerable in some ways but they try and provide some numbers and answers, whether we should build a bridge, whether we should have a tunnel instead. But do you think there's actually need for a better connection which can be smoothless between the two cities, which doesn't include a mode change to ferry, and which, as Simeon pointed out before, it makes the time more than double compared to the same distance on the same side of the lake?
Yeah. This is politically, I'll tell you, this is a challenging question, because I know in our community right now, there's a group, and like I said, this is a cyclical conversation, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. Hi, Dr. Davis, I see you there. Every about 5 years or so, this comes up. Build the bridge the gap, build the bridge between the city of Plattsburgh or the Plattsburghs and Burlington. Which I understand the demand for it. I may not agree with it though. Primarily, there's a couple of reasons why. And if I look from just what's the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, and what should the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh put political capital on and put focus on? And I don't want to say I disagree with the effort. I think that it's a valiant effort. I think that it's a worthwhile it's a worthwhile effort to understand all of the nuances of it, the political, the environmental, the financial impacts of it. And I think that without those, it's very difficult to say one way or the other whether or not it's viable, because there's a lot of moving parts to it. And I don't believe that all of those moving parts would line up. Frankly, I don't see that. I don't see that happening locally for that kind of initiative. From the city of Plattsburgh's perspective, we have and I don't want to use this as a straw man argument, because I think that they are very definitely two separate and distinct issues that we face. But there's also a train that runs through the city of Plattsburgh. And if I were to say, where should I, as the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, be spending my political capital, it really probably should be at trying to remove the train that rides directly through our city and consumes 85% of our waterfront. And it's a relic of the 1800s industrialism, where that's where it was natural for ships to come and port and load and unload trains, and that's just the nature of it. Now, am I going to see that train moved in my lifetime? Probably not. Am I going to see a bridge built in my lifetime? Probably not. Also, because there's already a bridge that spans between Vermont and New York, and it takes probably about 10 additional minutes to traverse if you were to drive just a little bit further north and opt not to take the ferry rather than just drive around to the bridge. And you could probably do some mapping. I don't want to exaggerate. I think it's maybe like 15, 20 minutes extra to drive that bridge in if things over in Ross's Point. But you can take a look at that too. And again, I'm not saying that should be considered the only alternative to get to Burlington. I'm completely aware as why people are arguing for a bridge, and I can't say that those arguments aren't valid. I just don't foresee all of those stars aligning to be able to support something as demanding, again, politically, environmentally, financially demanding as building a bridge between those two communities.
Okay.
I honestly wish I could say a resounding 100% yes, but I really would also want to see, and I believe that there is right now a group that's trying to obtain some funding for that kind of study to see what it would take. And again, I think it's a worthwhile conversation. It's a worthwhile discussion. But then also, when I look at the environmental impacts, not just to the lake, not just to Lake Champlain, but you have two state governments that need to align. You have a federal government that need to align. You have local governments that need to align. You have private businesses that need to align. There's a lot of stuff that needs to align for that to even happen. So
okay, so
that's quite complex.
Mayor Rosenquest.
Yeah.
So, final thought for the evening, for the afternoon. What do you wish Plattsburgh?
I get sentimental. I grew up here and I've seen where we've come. I lived on the Air Force Base when the Air Force Base was here, and that's how my family got here. And seeing transitions and change happen all of the time. My greatest wish for Plattsburgh really is, and as I said before, to find ourselves, to find our identity in the scale of global economy and finding our identity on the international stage. I think that's where we belong. I think that's where we deserve to belong, and we have been there. And I think that's really my hope for Plattsburgh is finding that voice in the international stage and being that leader as a small municipality as we are, but being that leader on that international stage. Fantastic.
Let's see how we can stay in touch with Mayor Rosenquest. Yeah. There it is, cityofplattsburgh.-ny.gov. I'll put it in the chat room. So Mayor, people can reach out to you here, contact the mayor's office if they have questions or comments. You
can call me, you can submit the form. I'm on Twitter I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So you can also reach out to me on any social channel that you're on right now. And I always love connecting with people. I'm very active on social. I'm very active in my community as well. And people see me. I'm on the street. I'm having dinner. I'm riding my bike and with my son in the trailer. So yeah, it's I love being around and I love engaging. So please reach out.
Fantastic, will do. Place that in the chat room. Thank you, the Honorable Christopher C. Rosenquest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, folks.
So let's take a look at what is coming up next Wednesday. Izzy Schill. Are sex comedies funny? Actress Izzy Schill has starred in series and films known to households everywhere, like Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and Orange is the New Black. But it's her work as film writer and directress that has made for the most colorful dinner table conversations. In her pandemic-era hit, Face to Face Time, the naive and dedicated Claire prepares a romantic video call surprise date for her new boyfriend, Danny, only to be rewarded with the worst kind of deception. Though Danny abhors Claire's surprise gesture of romance, he does everything in his power to feign gratification. Funny enough, in the end, rather than bringing the couple closer together, their common sexual prejudices push them farther apart. Danny deceives Claire by playing the part he thinks she expects of him, yet she initiated the deception in the first place. Claire is completely uncomfortable throughout, but goes through with it because she thinks it's expected of her. Shakespeare would surely agree, all the world's a stage, and comedies sometimes hit home in ways that, quote, we need to talk conversations cannot. Come welcome Izzy Schill to our show for an intimate look at Face to Face Time and her forthcoming feature film, Going Nowhere. As always, all information about upcoming shows can be found at www.simeonmoro.com. Again, that's next Wednesday. Izzy Schill. Are sex comedies funny? Once again, thank you so very much to the Honorable Christopher C. Rosenquest.
Let me also thank you, the Mayor, Simeon.
Yes.
I'm very glad that we met, and I'm very optimistic about the future of Plattsburgh. And yeah, I look forward to visiting the city.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
once again, thank you very much. Also from my side, on my behalf, to the Honorable Christopher C. Rosenquest. Thank you very much to co-host Davide Massa, to Professor Lino Rivera, and to Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet for their support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From Milan, Italy, New London, New Hampshire, Plattsburgh, New York, and the Bay Area, California. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Bye, folks.